If you're watching this video right now and you live in LA, that means that you're safe, and we are very grateful for that. As we were completing post in the last video, I asked Bones to define what a window was. We were going to do some film ups and edits, and it turned into a 5-minute long explanation, which kind of culminated into this.
The window gave everybody that was making money off of the film time to position themselves to make as much money as they possibly could.
The window is literally just one part of a movie's life. Once a movie is made and released, it has its theater time, it has its home video / streaming time, and it has the window. The window is in between those two things.
Well, that's why it's confusing, because the window was invented before streaming. It didn't really take into consideration streaming, and that's why everything is collapsing.
And that's an example of how the tiniest little practical logistical question can lead us down a road that kind of ends with the deepest, most esoteric question. So ultimately, I'm going to be asking a bunch of questions that have no real answers, and the video will be more philosophical in nature. The question we end up at, I'm going to posit at the beginning right now. I'm going to ask it, and if you have a direct response to it, I want you to think about it. The question is this: why have morals if they're not profitable?
I didn't know this was what this video was about.
Really? What did you think it was about?
I don't remember.
I think we all have a knee-jerk reaction to that question. I think we all think there's a You have no interest in talking about this.
No, I'm talking about it.
No, what are you thinking?
Nothing. Just, my mom's gonna watch this video.
I suspect most people who hear that question have that reaction, which is like, that's ridiculous. Of course you need to have morals if they're not profitable. Of course. But the questions that the small, tiny little steps made me end up there.
It's just something in business where morals and business don't necessarily overlap. The easy way is to not have morals and to just unscrupulously step on people to succeed. That's the easy way.
I agree.
We can break it down.
We can take the journey.
Let's do it.
The idea was...
No, let's go from what you were going to do. Ask your question and then let's go.
Like, pretend we didn't just have that conversation? It started with Edison and antitrust. Why did we even have those rules to begin with? Why did people even care then? If we're getting rid of them now and we supposedly don't care now. It's more about asking people if they really do care. That's the point of this, is like, if it's up to us to care, do you? Because the answer is money doesn't give a fuck. And money speaks for itself, and money is money is money. That's the kind of the conclusion of the video. But we're in this very fucked time right now. If we're going to be asking big questions, this is kind of the big question we need to address before we move forward. We talk about TikTok and Instagram and social media being the entertainment, the free entertainment that we do with our free time, instead of going to our 80th Clint Eastwood movie. That's what we're talking about right now. As the town goes through a literal and metaphorical shift right now, that's why I want to have the channel, is to ask these big questions, because Lord knows they're not asking the question on Entertainment Tonight or anybody's podcast. Did I say What's Happening, Film Friends? Oh, what's happening, film friends? I've said it a lot on this channel, but it's very important to separate the reality from the romantic. And it's very hard to do that when it comes to Hollywood and it comes to cinema and it comes to what we want to do in our dreams. It was very important for me early on, years and years ago, to make the understanding that cinema is equal parts art and cash. You cannot have one without the other. I think that's really, really important. Cinema was born in business. The only reason why it gets as big as it does is because it made money and became a genuine industry. Industry is business. It's money. It's economy. Films are investments. You put X amount into your investment, you should get X times 4 back. They happen to be able to make real money with art, and art that the world really, really cares about. Art that speaks directly to people's soul all over the world, no matter what language you speak, from the second it was born. It was born in France. It was born in New Jersey, filming trains, right? And having people leap behind the seats because they're terrified. Or the famous Great Train Robbery. That's Edison. Hollywood, the town as an industry, the home of film, was actually built as a scheme. It was a business scheme. What was going on was Thomas Edison had patents on his equipment. So he wanted a piece of everything that was getting made with any bit of his equipment. So what did they do? Edison was stationed in New Jersey. They went and took care of a couple things all at once. Not only is Los Angeles as far away from New Jersey as you can physically get in the United States, but two other really important things. One, they were filming on sets that needed sunlight. And it's even sunlight and no rain out here. You talk about it, it's obviously a problem now, but when we were first making films, that was part of the technical logistics of it. The second, more intriguing answer is that when trust busters, the dudes that Edison hired to come shake your fucking ankles and get the coinage to fall out of your pockets because you used his projector, the people in Hollywood would just go down to Mexico. They would literally take their reels to Mexico, and it wouldn't be a problem anymore until the trust busters went away. Again, art thriving within this schemy business. But that's what this was born into. If successful mainstream cinema is equal parts money and art, and the preferred equilibrium of that is 50-50, and films are investments regardless of its artistic value, that's what makes us pine for certain eras of film. The first silent films right before sound came, the epic silent films that are lost to time now. The 30s, the films that Billy Wilder was clearly making movies being nostalgic for.
And now, Grand Hotel, starring Greta Garbo, John Barrymore, Joan Crawford, Wallace Beery, and Lionel Barrymore. But first, a word from our alternate sponsor. Friends, do you have wobbly dentures?
And my personal favorite, not a very hot take, the New American Era in the 1970s. That time, the Easy Riders, Raging Bulls era, for me is the perfect balance of 50-50. These movies are great. They're performing really, really well. And that creates kind of the basic adage of our channel here, which is if the movie is good, it should perform well. That's what we learned at the movie theater. Ultimately, what trumps everything is if it's a good movie, people will come, you'll make your money. It behooves the cash to have good art. So why should we care? I don't have an answer. I'm genuinely asking you. I was thinking about Edison, and it got me to thinking about the Paramount decrees. For those who don't know, this is a really cursory, go do some research on it because it's actually very, very interesting. But in a nutshell, between 1908, I want to say, and the early 10s, like 1912 or so, movie studios were buying up movie theaters, and they were creating one complete pipeline so that this studio could make X amount of cash through their own theater, not having to compete with anybody, essentially creating these movie monopolies. And the country said, this is very bad. We don't want this. This is bad. So they created the Paramount decrees that said, if you own a movie studio, you cannot own a movie theater, thus creating competition. I asked myself, why did they give a fuck back then? I personally, from what I can tell, it's in response to the old oil dudes and the old train dudes like Rockefeller and Guggenheim, I think, right?
Well, they also, the American way is capitalism, and that means competition.
Right. We're all taught to look up to these masters of industry, these economic powerhouses that created the railways, that made billions of dollars, and look at them and look up to them as the true American dream. The fact is every single law that's been created for our health when it comes to the workplace, when it comes to society, is because they crossed a line that they weren't supposed to cross and made a lot of money off of people dying or getting hurt. I'm not exaggerating. So many workers got hurt, were killed in order for these CEOs to make profit. These men made their fortunes on exploitation. That in turn fed into city hall machines like Tammany Hall. If you've seen Gangs of New York, they kind of go through it. That's kind of what Gangs of New York is about, is how these cities were run by basically mob rule, like kind of like the mafia, and the money perpetuated that machine. The oil money, the train money perpetuated that machine.
Monk's already won by 3,000 more votes than there are voters.
Only 3, make it 20, 30. We don't need a victory, we need a Roman triumph.
But we don't have any more ballots.
Remember the first rule of politics. The ballots don't make the results. The counters make the results. The counters keep counting.
Now we have a new industry. It's the film industry. It's not the oil industry. It's not this. It's a brand new industry founded primarily by Jews. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. That all come together, create their companies, buy out their theaters, do the capitalist American dream thing. And in response, there's an anti-monopoly rule thrown on saying, you can't do that. We're not about this. We're trying to do better. We're trying to do better. Ostensibly, I think that's what they're saying. It made me very much question, was it only because of the Roosevelts that we gave a fuck about other people? Like, what happened? I don't know enough about history to understand why people cared enough to set these limits and rules on cash, when apparently now it's all very clear that if you have cash, you can do whatever you want. Unfortunately, that's the lesson that I'm learning. If you think I should be learning a different lesson, comment below. It was about the balance. It's been a constant balance. Is this balance necessary anymore in 2025? In 2020, with the sitting president, the paramount decrees ended.
Oh, you mean with the sitting president of the time?
Yeah, I didn't want to say his name.
That's fair.
President. It ended. There's nothing stopping anyone. No one cares. Is that because it's more than just movie theaters now? We're talking about streaming. We say this time and time again. Before the cough, Bones and I used to say, all that needs to happen is a little hiccup because everything is set up. Disney makes the movies. They put the movies into the theaters. Why put the movies into the theaters if they have a streaming service that everybody already has? All we need is a little hiccup. So with the Paramount decree ending means no one cares anymore, clearly. Oh, that happened in 1908. It has nothing to do with anything anymore. So I'm just asking why we care.
I think that people don't know what it means, and it hasn't really affected anything. They don't feel the repercussions of decision because they don't understand what it was.
Right. I think that's a astute point. I hear people ask things like, oh, I'm paying this much anyway for this subscription and this subscription and this subscription. It's just cable all over again. Why not just do cable? Well, I'll tell you why. Because if we are just going to go back to cable, then we want it to be Disney's cable, consarn it.
Bart, what did I tell you?
No talking like a grizzled 1890s prospector.
Disney wants to own it from beginning to end. If it is going to happen, you're seeing all of the streamers now have live channels and random channels. If it's going to happen anyway, I want to monetize it. Me, Disney.
That was a little saluty.
It seems like exactly the opposite of the Paramount decree is exactly what we're going for now. And that's why I'm positing this question now. Why have morals if they're not profitable? Why believe in the equilibrium of the 50-50 mainstream cinema art versus money if the answer is really just money is money is money is money is money? And that's really, really frustrating. This reminds me very, very much of one of my favorite Kids in the Hall sketches. If you'll indulge me. Scott Thompson plays his very straight, very masculine character, Danny Husk, who works in an industry. He, one morning, while he's about to put on his deodorant, takes a nice big whiff of his armpit and says,
You lose.
He walks into work and he's sweating through his shirt. And his boss calls him in and goes,
Good God, Husk, look at your pits.
You don't like?
No, I don't like, Dan. I do not like it all.
and then his boss catches a whiff of his sweat. And
In fact, Dan, I'd like to give you a promotion. If you wouldn't mind coming around the desk and let me have a good, healthy whiff of them pits.
Well, you're the boss.
soon the business is has Danny running on a treadmill, collecting his sweat and putting it into jars, selling the sweat. Before you know it, a utopia arises. The world is better. Everyone's partying at the office. The once bald, angry boss has manners and has long, luxurious locks now. And it ends with this boss who's come to some sort of samsara or peace or nirvana or something like that, talking to Danny, saying,
Dan, you know, when we came up with this Husk Musk idea, I just thought it would be a gold mine, you know? And granted, it has made us the #1 multinational corporation in the world.
Number one.
Yes, Dan. But it's also made us the only multinational corporation in the world.
I don't understand, sir.
Dan, you see, every other business is, well, out of business, and that's not good business. People aren't even bothering to go to work anymore, Dan. They're just sitting at home and smelling your smell. But Utopia isn't profitable, Dan.
No.
No, Dan.
the idea of having no business being bad for business reminds me of Hollywood. If you take the seed, the core, the point of the industry, that artistic soul of the industry out, then what's the point? How do we care about cinema as an art form in this new world in and of itself? And maybe most importantly, do we even care anymore? As we ask ourselves, we're not going to spend our time at the theater the same way. We spend our time creating our own entertainment now. So what is the business? What is the competition? How are we going to go about this? What are the bigger questions that we need to ask as we move forward? Like, need we the art form in this art forms industry anymore? And if that rubs you the wrong way, that's something to think about.
How do you feel?
Ma?
Yeah, it's your channel, buddy.
How do I feel? I personally think it's important to have empathy more than sympathy. I don't feel bad for people who can't get their 20th movie into the theater. I think now is a time to understand that if you're gonna be in cinema, particularly cinema, personally, I think there needs to be a point. Gone are the days of making a movie because you think it might play. Gone are the days of the, like, oh, this should make some money, let's give this a shot. People in theory should like this. I think now it's about have something to say, make your flick, and if you are blessed, you'll be able to make more where you can say some other stuff. But the days of making movies for the sake of making movies, for me, are over. I think it's selfish and ridiculous and adds to the noise. If everybody cares about the movies that they make personally, while considering the audience at the same time, then the adage plays. The movie should be good. That means the movie should play well. I believe in cinematic karma. For every Barbie that's made, I want a Beau is Afraid. It's about finding the balance between Avengers Endgame and my own scrapers. I think most aspiring and working filmmakers would like to achieve that 50-50. You want your movie to be good, you want your movie to make money. That's how you get a Jaws, That's how you get a Star Wars. That's how you get a Jurassic Park. That's how you get the Avengers. What could be better, right? Making the money and having the movie be great. And also that goes all the way back to the window conversation, which is, what is a window? The window is a very special time in every movie's lifespan. It's the time in a movie's life after it gets dropped in the theater, before it gets dropped on home video, ultimately. That's why we talk about the window so much, because it used to be over a year to let your film seep into public consciousness. And now the latest is Wicked just made a shitload of money by releasing it on VOD before New Year's Eve. And then they announced it to everybody like this is a mad success. So don't expect the window to get wider. They're just going to make the money how they can make it. If you can make it in the theater and make it at home, then they will. That's what they'll do. It's not more romantic than that or deeper than that.
We really figured out that the window exists just so they could wring as much money out of the film in first run, second run, third run theaters.
Right.
Before it goes to DVD or...
But now we're into the next stage.
And so the window doesn't even make sense anymore, really.
Nope. So you have to ask yourself, if the window doesn't make sense anymore, what are we doing putting movies into theaters?
Creating events.
Creating events. It's something that we're doing because we want to do it. These are things that we are actively trying to preserve because we like it. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind when you're sweating, wondering what will the audience like? How am I going to get my career going? How badly I wanted Robert Altman's career to be able to, I swear to God, I could write a script every year, make the movie, cut it every year. I could do that. If I wanted to do that, I would have to self-fund, do it on YouTube, some sort of a platform, and make that for myself because that's something that I want. But the climate doesn't need me to make a movie once a year. And that's why I don't care about Clint Eastwood. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you. Let me know what you think. What do you think about any of this? Tell me where I left holes. I'm dying to know what you think. Get as ethereal as you so desire. I want to hear your wildest takes, and I will consider them with great aforethought and much respect. Please check out the links below. We got a merch store. We got our GoFundMe for the micro cinema. Please like, comment, subscribe, interact, do all those things. We love to hear from you. We love you, LA, and I'll see you in the future.
What?